Befriending the learned. If one does not preserve the learned in a state, he will be injuring the state. If one is not zealous to recommend the virtuous upon seeing one, he will be neglecting the ruler. Enthusiasm is to be shown only to the virtuous, and plans for the country are only to be shared with the learned. Few are those who, neglecting the virtuous and slighting the learned, could still maintain the existence of their countries. Formerly, Lord One was once in exile, and yet later became the leading feudal lord. Lord One was once forced to leave his state, and yet later became a tyrant among the feudal lords. Lord Goujian of Yue was once brought under humiliation by the king of Wu, and yet he was later looked upon with awe by the princess of China. The reason that these three men became famous and successful in the world lies in that they were able to endure shame and humiliation within their states. The greatest men know of no defeat. The next greatest turn failure into success, and this by employment of the people. And this by employment of the people. I have heard it said, it is not that there is no peaceful abode. Pardon me, I was just having a problem there with my formatting. Let me just move, that's better. There we go. Verse 2. I have heard it said, it is not that there is no peaceful abode, but that I have no peaceful heart over others' homelessness. It is not that my wealth is not sufficient, but that my passion yearns for more, to improve others' conditions. Therefore the superior man is strict with oneself but lenient with others in matters of conduct, while the multitude are lenient with themselves but strict with others. The superior man carries out his ambitions successfully in action and studies the situation when he is at leisure. Even when he is taken as a mediocre individual, he feels no dissatisfaction. This is because he has self-confidence. Therefore, those who attempt what seems difficult to them will obtain what they desire, but few who aim at what they desire can avoid what they dislike. Therefore, artful ministers are harmful to the Lord, and flattering subordinates are injurious to the ruler. The Lord should have uncompromising ministers, the ruler should have stern subordinates. Only when counsel is given with far-sightedness and advice administered with sternness can the life of the state be secure and permanent. If, to the contrary, the subordinates should value their positions and keep silence, the ministers near at hand would be speechless, and those far away could only sigh, and the people would become bitter. When the ruler is surrounded with praises, and flatteries, and insulated against good counsel, then the country is in danger. Was it not because they would not employ the scholars that Jie and Zhou lost their empire and their lives? Thus it is said, to offer the greatest treasure of the country to the ruler is not as laudable as to recommend the virtuous and introduce the learned. Among 5 weapons, the sharpest will be broken first. Among 5 swords, the keenest will be first worn out. The sweet wells become sooner dry, and the elegant trees are oftener felled. The tortoises that are more responsive are oftener burned, and the snake that shows more magic power are more sacrificed. Thus, Bi Gan died of his uprightness. Meng Ban perished by his strength. Xi Shi paid with her life for her beauty, and Wu Qi torn alive for his achievement. This shows that there are but few who excel other people and do not perish on account of it. Hence the saying, position of the supreme is hard to keep. Even the kind ruler will not show favours to ministers without merit. Even the affectionate father will not love his useless sons. He who occupies a position but is not equal to the task is not the proper person for the position. He who draws emoluments but does not deserve the rank is not the proper proprietor of the emoluments. Good bows may be hard to draw, but they can reach great heights and pierce deeply. Good horses may be hard to ride on, but they can carry heavy burdens and make long journeys. Real talents may be hard to command, but they can be trusted to be envoys to the court of the emperor and meet the nobility. Therefore the big rivers do not despise the little brooklets for tributaries, and great men do not neglect any menial task or reject any trifle. And so they become vessels for the world. The water in a river does not come from a single source. Neither is the fur coat that is worth 1,000 yi composed of the white fur of a single fox. Now, to discard those who agree with the right, but employ those who agree with oneself is not the way to be a great ruler. Just as heaven and earth do not dazzle, great bodies of water do not boil and foam, and great conflagrations do not coruscate, so the imperial character does not lift itself up beyond reach. As to the chieftain of only 1,000 people, he is straight like an arrow and smooth like a whetstone, unable to tolerate the manifold ways, for narrow gorges clog up rapidly, shallow streams are soon exhausted, and the barren land does not bear fruits. When a ruler confines his favours within his palace, then they cannot be shared by the whole country. That is chapter 1 of the Mozi. If you're joining us, we're going through the Mozi, one of the Merry Warring States philosophers. I noticed that there were no audiobooks on this book, so this video is meant to remedy that. We get a sense there in chapter 1 of some of Mozi's extremities. Even an affectionate father will not love his useless sons, it says there. There's an extremity there, isn't there? That I suppose one might say one can dislike what someone does without hating them. But here, Mozi is advocating for a father to not love their useless sons, something Confucius would certainly disagree with. And other warring states philosophers like Shanyang, who are more practical, wouldn't really have an opinion on. Some wisdom in there as well. Among the 5 weapons, the sharpest will be broken first. Among the first swords, the keenest will be worn out. That reminds me very much of the problem with Shang Yu in the Chu Han contention, in that he, being so focused on getting revenge, was unable to think of anything beyond that regarding strategy. So let's move on to chapter 2. As we move into chapter 2, and I will answer them at the end. So, chapter 2 on self-cultivation. Though there should be tactics in war, courage is fundamental. Though there should be ceremonies for mourning, grief is essential. Though a scholar should be learned, he must first of all exhibit good conduct, When the seeds are not well sown, there is no use in labouring for a good harvest. When the people near by are not befriended, there is no use of endeavouring to attract those at a distance. When one's relatives are not submissive, there is no use in endeavouring to establish contacts with the outside world. When one cannot accomplish a single task from beginning to end, there is no use of attempting many things. And when one is ignorant of a common place that is pointed out, there is no use of pursuing wide knowledge. Verse 2. Therefore, when the early kings administered the empire, they would investigate what was within reach and attract those at a distance. Investigation of a locality by the superior men means that it's orderly government. When they discovered misconduct or depravity, they corrected themselves. Thus all the complaints disappeared, and conduct became regulated by itself. When the superior men do not listen to treacherous words or utter any threatening sound, or entertain any idea of injuring somebody, then, if there were underhanded persons, they would lose support. Therefore, the superior men are daily more energetic in performing their duty, but weaker in their desires, and more stately in their appearance. The way of the superior man makes the individual incorruptible in poverty and righteous when wealthy. It makes him love the living and mourn the dead. These four qualities of conduct cannot be hypocritically embodied in one's personality. There is nothing in his mind that goes beyond love. There is nothing in his behaviour that goes beyond respectfulness. And there is nothing from his mouth that goes beyond gentility. When one pursues such a way until it pervades his four limbs and permeates his flesh and skin, and until he becomes white-haired and bald-headed without ceasing, one is truly a sage. His wisdom will not be far-reaching, whose purpose is not firm. His action will not be effective, whose promises are not kept. He who will not share his possessions with others is not worthy to be a friend. And he who does not stand firm on principles and has neither wide knowledge nor penetrating judgment is not worthy to be a companion. Just as a weak trunk will have but small branches on, so mere bravery without cultivation will result in dissipation. And just as a dirty source will issue from an impure stream, so unfaithful conduct will unfavourably affect one's fame. For fame does not spring up out of nothing, nor does praise grow by itself. Fame follows upon success, and is not obtainable by hypocrisy. He will not be listened to who talks much, but is slow in action. Even though he is discerning, he will not accomplish anything who is capable but likes to boast of his feats. Even though he drudges, the wise discerns all in his mind but speaks simply. And he is capable but does not boast of his deeds, and so his name is exalted the world over. In speech, not quantity, but ingenuity, not eloquence, but insight should be cultivated. If one is not wise and without insight, breeding only dissipation in one's personality. This is just the contrary of what should be cultivated. Any virtue that does not spring from the heart will not remain, and any result of action that is not aimed at by oneself will not stay. There is no shortcut to fame, and there is no trick to praise. The superior man regards his body as a whole vehicle for his character, None who places much importance on personal gains but lightly sacrifices his fame has ever become a gentleman in the world. Some great wisdom there from Mozi. If you're joining me, we're going through the Mozi, the central book of Mohism, one of the many Warring States philosophers, born in the early period of the Warring States, like Confucius, in the state of Lu. He features in the book there, you can see on your screen, the three-body problem. Unfortunately not in the Netflix version of it, which, as we all know, dumbed it down. I just noticed that there was no audiobook of the Mozi, and therefore thought, why not? I'll do an audiobook of it. My chapter. Pardon me as I just take a swig of this. And the next chapter is called On Dying. Not dying in the sense of a bodily death. Dying as in making clothes into a different colour. If there's any audio issues or any other issues, do let me know. And with that, I will proceed. Chapter 3 of the Mozi, On Dying. Verse 1. Watching a dyer of silk at work, Mozi sighed, saying, what is dyed in blue becomes blue. What is dyed in yellow becomes yellow. When the silk is put in a different dye, its colour becomes also different. Having been dipped in 5 times, it has changed its colour 5 times, therefore dyeing should be done with great care. This is true not only with silk dyeing, even a country changes its colour in response to its influences. Thus, Shun came under the influences of Xu, You, and Boyang, Yu under that of Gao Yao and Bo Yi, Tang under that of Yi Yin, Zhong Hui and King Wu, under that of the Grand Duke and Duke of Zhou. Now, these 4 kings had been under good influences, therefore they came to possess the empire, and were commissioned sons of heaven. Their achievements and great fame extended from heaven to earth. And when preeminently magnanimous and righteous figures of the world are mentioned, they are invariably those referred to. Jie of Xia came under the influence of Ganxin and Tui Yi. Zhou of Yin under that of the Duke of Zhou and Erlai. King Li under that of Changfu. Duke Li and Yi Zhong of the state of Rong, and King You under that of Yi, Duke of Fu and Gu, Duke of Cai. Now these 4 kings had been under bad influences, therefore they lost their empire and their lives, and were persecuted everywhere. And when the most unrighteous and shameful persons of the world are mentioned, they are invariably those referred to. Lord Huan of Qi came under the influence of Guanzhong and Bao Shu. Lord Wen of Jing under that of Uncle Fan and Gao Yan. Lord Zhuang of Chu and under that of Shun Shu, and the Master of Shen, He Lu of Wu, under that of Wu Yuan and Wen Yi, Gou Jian of Yue, under that of Fan, Li and Minister Zhong. Now these 5 lords had been under good influences, therefore they became tyrants among the feudal lords, and their achievements and their fame were handed down to posterity. Fan Ji She came under the influence of Zhang Liu, Shuo and Wang Sheng. Jiang Xingying under that of Ji Qin and Gao Jiang. Fu Chai under that of Wang Sun Luo, and Minister Pi, Ji Bo Yao under that of Zhi Guo, and Zhang Wu, Shang of Zhongshan under that of Wei Yi, and Yan Chang, Lord Kang of Song under that of Tang Yang, and Tian Bu Li. Now these 6 princes had been under bad influences, therefore their states were ruined and they were executed. Their ancestral temples were destroyed and descendants annihilated. The rulers and the subjects were dispersed and the people were left homeless. The whole world points to these 6 princes as the most greedy and disturbing people. Now, how can the rulers obtain security? They can obtain it by following the right way, and one will naturally follow the right way when under good influence. Therefore, capable rulers are very painstaking in the selection of men, while they might not be so careful in attending to the administration themselves. But the incapable wear out their body and exhaust their energy, tax their mind and stretch their thought, and yet their states are only placed in greater danger and their persons under more humiliation. Now it is not that these 6 princes do not value their states, or hold their lives cheap. It is really that they do not understand the relative importance of things, and it is due to the bad influences that their ideas of importance is distorted. Not only states but also individuals are subject to influence. If one has for friends none but those who love magnanimity and righteousness, and who are careful and respectful, of course, one's family will become more prosperous, and one's person more at peace, and one's name more honourable every day. And as an official, one will be properly qualified. Examples of such are Duan, Genmu, Qinzi, and Fu Yue. On the contrary, if one has for friends none but those who are proud and quarrelsome and pretend to be intimate, naturally one's family will be reduced to straits. One person will be more in danger, and one's name more dishonourable every day, and one will not be qualified for office. And examples of such are Zixi, Ya, and Shu Diao. An ode says, one must choose what to be tinged with. To be careful about what one is to be tinged with is just the theme of this essay, and indeed we have come full circle in that topic, chapter 3 on dyeing. See here, Mozi drawing out that analogy of the dyer at the silk work, changing the colour of things, and mentioning all the influences on people over Chinese history. He is very much like Confucius in this way, referring to many figures from history as examples, or bad examples in this case. The Taoist texts, many others. Without further ado, let's go into chapter 4 on the necessity of standards. Mozi said, to accomplish anything whatsoever, one must have standards. None have yet accomplished anything without them. The gentlemen fulfilling their duties as generals and councillors have their standards. Even their artisans performing their tasks also have their standards. The artisans make square objects according to the square, circular objects according to the compasses. They draw straight lines with the carpenter's line and find the perpendicular by a pendulum. All artisans, whether skilled or unskilled, employ these 5 standards. Only the skilled workers are accurate. Though the unskilled labourers have not yet attained accuracy, yet they do better by following these standards than otherwise. Thus, all artisans follow the standards in their work. Now, The government of the empire and that of the large states do not observe their standards. This shows the governors are even less intelligent than the artisans. What then should be taken as the proper standard in government? How will it do for everybody to imitate his parents? There are numerous parents in the world, but few are magnanimous. For everybody to imitate his parents is to imitate the unmagnanimous. Imitating the unmagnanimous cannot be said to be following the proper standard. How will it do for everybody to follow his teacher? There are numerous teachers in the world, but few are magnanimous. For everybody to imitate his teacher is to imitate the unmagnanimous. Imitating the unmagnanimous cannot be taken as following the proper standard. How will it do for everybody to imitate his ruler? There are many rulers in the world, but few are magnanimous. For everybody to imitate the ruler is to imitate the unmagnanimous. Imitating the unmagnanimous cannot be taken as the following the right standard. So then neither the parents nor the teacher should be accepted as the standard in government. What then should be taken as the standard in government? Nothing better than following heaven. Heaven is all-inclusive and impartial in its activities, abundant and unceasing in its blessings, and lasting and untiring in its guidance. And so, when the sage kings had accepted heaven as their standard, they measured every action and enterprise by heaven. What heaven desired they would carry out. What heaven abominated they refrained from. Now what is it that heaven desired? And what is it that abominates? Certainly heaven desires to have men benefit and love one another, and abominates to have them hate and harm one another. How do we know that heaven desires to have men love and benefit one another, and abominates to have them hate and harm one another? Because it loves and benefits men universally. How do we know that it loves and benefits men universally? Because it claims all and accepts offerings from all. All states in the world, large or small, are cities of heaven, and all people, young or old, honourable or humble, are its subjects, for they all graze oxen and sheep, feed dogs and pigs, and prepare clean wine and cakes to sacrifice to heaven. Does this not mean that heaven claims all and accepts offerings from all? Since heaven does claim all and accepts offerings from all, what then can make us say that it does not desire men to love and benefit one another? Hence those who love and benefit others heaven will bless. Those who hate and harm others heaven will curse. For it is said that he who murders the innocent will be visited by misfortune. How else can we explain the fact that men murdering each other will be cursed by heaven? Thus we are certain that heaven desires to have men love and benefit one another, and abominates to have them hate and harm one another. The ancient sage kings Yu, Tang, Wen and Wu loved the people of the world universally, leading them to reverence of heaven and worship the spirits. Many were their benefits to the people, and thereupon heaven blessed them, establishing them emperors, and all the feudal lords of the empire showed them respect. On the other hand, the wicked kings Jie, Zhou, You, and Li hated all the people in the world, seducing the people to curse heaven and ridicule the spirits. Great were their injuries to the people. Thereupon heaven brought them calamity, depriving them of their empire and their lives. And posterity condemn them to this day. Jie, Zhou, You, Li, and then are those that committed evil and were visited by calamities. And Yu and Tang, Wen and Wu are those that loved and benefited the people and obtained blessings, because they loved and benefited the people, as well as those who were visited by calamities, because they hated and harmed. Chapter today. Chapter 5 on the 7 causes of anxiety. Mozi said there are 7 causes of worry to a state. What are these 7 causes of worry? When the outer and inner city walls are not defensible, this is the first worry. When an enemy state is approaching, and yet one's neighbours do not come to the rescue, this is the second worry. When the resources of the people have all been spent on useless enterprises and gifts, all squandered upon incapable men, when people's resources are exhausted without producing any profit, then the treasury is emptied by entertaining idle company. This is the third worry. When the officials value only their salaries, and the sophists only friendship, and when the subordinates dare not remonstrate against the laws the ruler has made for persecution. This is the fourth worry. When the Lord is overconfident of his own wisdom and holds no consultation, when he feels he is secure and makes no preparation against attack, and when he does not know that he must be a watchful while neighbours are planning against him. This is the fifth worry. When those are trusted are not loyal, and the loyal are not trusted, this is the sixth worry. And when the crops are not sufficient for food, and the ministers cannot be charged with responsibilities, and when awards fail to make people happy, and punishment to make them afraid, this is the seventh worry. With these 7 causes present in the maintenance of the state will perish, and in the defence of a city, the city will be reduced to ruin by the approaching enemy. Wherever these 7 causes are found, the country will face calamity. And I'm going to stop there because there's almost too many parallels with our times for me to get my head around here. There's some great wisdom in that verse for sure. Those 7 anxiety, that one particularly, when those trusted are not loyal, and the loyal are not trusted. How many times have we seen our civilization, having disloyal people at the top, people who are not worthy of our trust? How many times have we seen that? Well, more just speaking to that fact, he would have seen it many times in his own time. He would have lived through the Warring States, the period in which, with the decline of the Zhou dynasty, the great stabilizers of Chinese history, degenerating and falling apart towards the end into the Warring States period. Very prescient, that verse. I do intend to continue and finish the chapter, but that was just, there's too much wisdom there to just ignore and forget about. So that is chapter 5, the 7 causes of anxiety by Mozi. Verse 1, highly recommended to anyone throughout history as a warning to see where you are. That's what I find fascinating about looking at other civilizations. One can notice where one is by looking at other civilizations. Verse 2, now the 5 grains are the people's mainstay and the sources of the ruler's revenue. When the people lose their support, the ruler cannot have any revenue either, and without food the people will not observe order. Therefore food should be secured, land cultivated, and expenditures cut down. When all the 5 grains are gathered, all the 5 states will be offered the ruler, and when not gathered, the 5 tastes will not be offered. Failure of 1 grain is called dearth. Failure of 2 grains is called scarcity. Failure of 3 grains is called calamity. Failure of 4 grains is called want. Failure of all 5 grains is called famine. When the country is in dearth, all the salaries of the officials below the rank of minister will be reduced by 1/5. In scarcity, they will be reduced by 2/5. In calamity, they will be reduced by 3/5. In want, they will be reduced by 4/5. And when famine is in the country, there will be no salaries beyond their rations. Imagine, imagine our governments accepting that now. Just imagine that. And actually taking cuts when there's problems. They don't, do they? Therefore, when famine and dearth visit a country, the ruler will omit 3 from the 5 items of sacrifice, and the officials will suspend the courts, and the scholars will not go to school, and the Lord will not put on his robe to give audience. Even envoys from other feudal lords and messengers from neighbouring states are entertained with cooked food only, and it is not sumptuous. The side horses of the carriage team are done away with, and the walks in the palace are not weeded. Neither are the horses fed with grains, nor are the concubines and maids clothed with silk. And this is a sign of extreme scarcity. Just imagine that happening here. We see quite the opposite, don't we? Now, if carrying her child and drawing water from a well, she would, of course, drawing water from a well, a woman dropped the child into the well, she would, of course, endeavour to get it out. But famine and dearth is a much greater calamity than the dropping of a child. Should there not be also endeavour to prevent it? People are gentle and kind when the year is good, but selfish and vicious when it is bad. Yet how can they be held responsible? When many produces but few consume, then there can be no bad year. On the contrary, when few produce and many consume, there can be no good year. Thus it is said, scarcity of supply should stimulate study of the seasons, and want of food demands of economy of expenditures. The ancients produced wealth according to the seasons. They ascertained the source of wealth before they appropriated the products, and therefore they had plenty. Could even the ancient sage king cause the 5 grains invariably to ripen and be harvested, and the floods and the droughts never to occur? Yet none were frozen or starved. Why was it? Because they made full use of the seasons and were frugal in their own maintenance. The history of Shah says that the deluge lasted 7 years in the time of Yu, and the history of Yin tells that a drought visited Tang for 7 years. These are the extremes of disasters, yet the people were not frozen or starved. Why was this so? The reason lies in diligent production and thrifty consumption. Again, much wisdom there. I'm finding this chapter 5 to be full of wisdom. How about you, viewers? If there's any verses that you enjoyed there, do let me know in the comments. If you're joining me now, I believe we're going to finish this chapter, and then I'll move on to chapter 6 next time. If you're just joining me, we're reading through Mozi, the central text of Mohism. I'll be planning on going through this every week. There was no audiobook on this subject that I could find, and I want to remedy that by this stream. Comments or questions in the chat. I'll finish this chapter and then go through any. Therefore, famine and dearth cannot be prepared against unless there are stored grains in the granaries, and justice cannot be maintained against the unjust unless there are ready weapons in the armory. One cannot defend himself unless the inner and outer city walls are in repair, and one cannot meet emergencies unless his ideas are well thought out. Thus Qing Ji was unprepared, and he should not have set out on the journey. Jie made no preparation against the Tang, and he was sent into exile. And the Zhou made no preparations against Wu, and he was executed. Now Jie and Zhou were both emperors. rank and possessed the whole empire, yet they both perished at the hand of rulers of states of only 100 li. What is the reason for this? Because they depended on their rank and wealth and made no preparations. Therefore, preparation is what a country should emphasize. Supply is the treasure of a country, armament its claws, and the city walls are the stronghold of its defences, and these three items are the essentials to the existence of a state. The present rulers squander great amounts of wealth to reward, and the undeserving empty the treasury to acquire carriages and horses, exhaust the labourers to build palaces and furnish amusements. Upon their dearth, again, thick coffins and many coats and fur coats are to be furnished. Porches and pavilions are built for them while they are living, and tombs when they are dead. By this the people are embittered, and the treasury is left lean, while the amusements are not yet satisfying to the superiors. The hardships already becomes unbearable for the subject. Such a state will fall under any attack, and such people will perish by famine, and all this is due to the absence of preparation. Moreover, food is what the sages treasured. The history of the Zhou says, without 3 years' food in store, a state cannot be a state, as it is in danger of losing its sovereignty. A family being without food in store to be sufficient for 3 years, its children cannot be its children. They are in danger of being abandoned or sold to others. Such then is the preparation of a country. Blimey. I remember finding some excellent chapters in the Mozi, and this chapter has been excellent so far. The 7 causes of anxiety, a definite highlight.